Okay, you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. And just before we get going with the conversation, let's take this background report from Abdusalam Jibril.
Autism is a serious developmental disorder that impairs the ability to communicate and interact, manifest during early childhood, irrespective of gender, race, or socio-economic status. Also known as autism spectrum disorder, the World Health Organization (WHO) says about 1 in 100 children around the world have autism. The global health body also notes that people with autism often have co-occurring conditions including epilepsy, depression, anxiety, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, as well as challenging behaviors such as difficulty in sleeping and self-injury. The WHO further lists autism symptoms to include difficulty with communication, difficulty with social interactions, obsessive interest, and repetitive behaviors. In Nigeria, medical experts stress that there could be over 100,000 cases of autism disorder annually across the country. However, the lack of data and paucity of research have compounded the challenge many autistic persons are saddled with. The experts also note that autism, though a lifelong disorder, can be reduced through early recognition, behavioral and educational therapy. The WHO insists that with over 200 million people to cater to, the country requires at least 363,000 additional doctors to meet this target. It says the doctor-patient ratio of one doctor to 600 patients is a Herculean challenge for Nigeria to meet up with, given the rate of mass exodus within the medical profession. In addition to this challenge, some experts reveal that there is a dearth of trained professionals, such as psychologists and speech therapists, who can cater to the needs of autistic patients. Stigma and discrimination are also twin challenges many of those suffering from autism are facing. There is currently a lack of understanding from people, and their families may face social exclusion, bullying, and even violence. What measures should be put in place to ensure that those suffering from autism are protected against stigmatization, bullying, and discrimination? What are latest developments in autism research and advocacy, and are there plans towards ensuring the medical attention they need? These and more will form the crux of discussions as guests speak to empowering autistic persons in Nigeria shortly.
All right, thank you very much, Abdusalam Jibril, for that background report. And now, joining us to discuss empowering autistic persons, let me introduce right here in the studio, Happy Rugbere. Happy Rugbere is a business development and marketing specialist. He's also an autistic parent. Welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
All right, we have also here in Abuja been joined by Charles Ugoke, who is a speech language pathologist and CEO Sunset Speech and Language Resource Center here in Abuja. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, thank you, sir.
We have also been joined from our Kanu studio by Dr. Halima Adamu Dal, pediatrician, neurology unit, Department of Pediatrics, Aminu Kanu Teaching Hospital, and state president, Medical Women Association of Nigeria, M1 Kanu State Chapter. A pleasure to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria.
Morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Rick.
All right. Also joining us for the conversation from Oka, the Anambra State capital, is Maria Okafor, the founder, RIA by Maria. That's RBM Autism Foundation. Glad you could join us for the conversation, Maria. All right. Autism Foundation. Founder and director, Patrick Speech and Languages Center. She joins us from US via Zoom. Many thanks, Dotun, for being a part of the conversation.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
You know, just to set a tone for this conversation, could you, tell us, for those of us who may not be aware, those watching who may not know what autism is, tell us, what is autism? What is it all about? What are the symptoms? What are the causes? And yes, let's just begin from that point.
Okay, thank you very much for that question. Like earlier presented, autism is a disorder of neurodevelopment, meaning that it's a disorder of the brain and some other functions. Development is part of the brain and other functions. So a person suffering from this disorder has a defective communication, interaction, socialization, and their relationship. Meaning that the child having this disorder cannot communicate verbal or non-verbally, cannot interact with other person, and cannot socialize. So these persons are on their own. They have defective communication, interaction, and socialization. So this is what autism means. And then in addition to that, they have some other peculiar characteristics with which we recognize them, such as some restrictive behaviors. They have some body movements that, as we call them, stereotypies, in the form of, they could have, it can come in different forms. Some are involved in moving their body parts, which is in a kind of repetitive and a similar pattern. They have some restrictive behaviors. They restrict themselves to certain behaviors in which daily, recurrently, they attach to that behavior. And they cannot communicate, like I say, so they will not develop speech, they will not interact, they don't recognize anybody around them. They are on their own. And then autism is a spectrum, meaning that there are two extremes. It could be a mild a disease, and then it could be a severe form, and then in between. However, there is a minimum diagnostic criteria with which a person has to fulfill. So we have our tools, we have a checklist, we have certain screening tools that we apply to come up with the minimum diagnostic criteria for us to diagnose someone and say this person has autism. Early features could be, when we talk of development, from infancy to toddler, there are certain characteristics. So by 18 months, we should be able to diagnose that, yeah, this child has some features, of autism. Because at that time, you should expect some level of speech, you should expect some level of socialization, you should expect some level of interaction, you should expect some level of communication. So a child with autism would not develop all these things. And then they could have either autism alone or autism with some other problems. Some children who have other conditions like some other brain problem, epilepsies, ADHD, and so on, they can come down with autism in addition. And then there are other diseases that looks like autism, but they are not autism. So that's why I made mention of diagnostic criteria, which we apply to come down with the diagnosis of autism. As you talk about the etiology, this is a disorder actually that the etiology is not yet understood. When we say etiology is not yet understood, it's straightforward. There is no particular specific thing that you attach and say this is a cause. Like we all know malaria caused by Plasmodium species, mosquito, and all those things. So in autism, there is no particular etiology, single etiology that you single out and say this is the cause of autism, but there are other factors that are identified. First of all, the genetic coding, the genetic part of an individual. If you had that genetic tendency to have autism, then he develops it. Then other factors, environmental factors, play a key important role also in developing autism. Some of them like family setup, sometimes when a child is exposed to a harsh environment with the background genetic predisposition, it can tilt up. And then we have seen many children coming from an environment where everything appears to be perfect for them also. So even from there you can see, so it has no boundaries. Actually, it can occur, it can affect any child of any race, any tribe, anywhere in the world. And then some children, like I said, with other brain problems like epilepsies, intellectual disabilities, they can come down in addition to their problem with autistic features, with the need intervention. So in summary, this is just an introduction of autism.
Thank you very much, Dr. Halima Atal, for your introductory comments. Let's get back here in the studio, and I'd like to get to Happy here. What does it mean? Give us a sense of what it means to be an autistic parent.
Okay, well, I'll say that it's quite challenging sometimes, and a lot of people tag autism as different things. You know, when I was younger, things I see that my child do now, we used to call them jaguda. You know, you see children that are very stubborn, so you don't really know what it is. So I feel that the more education you get about it, the better it is for you to be able to address it. You know, when we first of all had issues with my son, he wasn't talking. We even went and did adenoscopy, the surgery for the adenoid, thinking that adenoid was blocking his ears. We took him for spiritual cleansing. We did a lot of things, you know. So I feel that as a parent, knowing what is wrong with your child and getting education, it's easy for you to be able to address what the issues are.
Could you tell us specifically about the challenges that you have faced, you know, in dealing with your child, you know, day to day? How has it been?
Okay, so she's very unpredictable, you know. So there are triggers that make my son, so it's a boy, that make my son to actually react in ways that you cannot predict. So as a parent, we always try, my wife and I, we try as much as possible to understand what those triggers are, and we try to ensure that we avoid things that make him to flare up or to make him to throw tantrums, and just follow him at his pace.
All right, thank you so much, Happy. Let's get to Charles Ogoke now. Dr. Halima already set a background for us on what autism is all about, but I want you to tell us about, you know, recent developments, or if you like, research concerning autism. I watched a documentary about autism recently, and it showed that people can also develop autism at a later stage in life, or be diagnosed at a later stage in life. Could you speak to us, you know, about all of that?
Okay. Thank you so much. For autism, I want to give just a very brief background of autism once more. Like my colleague have said, autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder. That means that it comes from the brain. All right. It means that the brain did not develop the way it ought to have developed. Now,
at conception?
Of course. Now, we have peri and postnatal causes that can lead to autism. Now, peri means during pregnancy. What occurred during pregnancy? Now, maybe poor nutrition during pregnancy, poor antenatal care, illness, and all that can actually lead to a child having autism. It can even be perinatal during delivery. What happened, prolonged labor, and some issues that occurred during delivery can be postnatal, illness, and so many other things there. Now, but when it comes to autism, it affects a different part of the brain, and which means that this brain did not develop the way they ought to have developed. Now, it can be mild, it can be moderate, it can be severe, and that is why we have level 1, level 2, and level 3 autism using DSM-5 to check. Level 1 is the most, let me say, the mild one, what we call high functioning autism. Level 2 is the moderate type. Level 3 is the severe type of autism. So these ones can actually throw more tantrums. They can have meltdown, may not be aware of danger and all that. So now coming back now, this is how the brain functions. So I'll just go to the cerebrum. Cerebrum is the biggest part of the brain. It has 4 lobes. And these 4 lobes has different functions. For example, the lobe that makes you to understand what you're hearing is called the temporal lobe, meaning that the ear cannot make it to know what you're hearing. Ear only transport the sound to the temporal lobe. Now, temporal lobe needs to receive the sound, discriminate the sound, and interpret the sound. Now, if there is a developmental delay in this part of the brain, temporal lobe, now the ear might transport the sound to the temporal lobe, but the temporal lobe may not be able to interpret that sound as a meaningful something. For example, here now, I'll just use this water. Ear has been hearing water, water, water. Ear carries the sound, water, to the temporal lobe. But if the temporal lobe cannot interpret or has difficulty interpreting this water, it may not know that this is water, but it depends on the delay in the development, mild, moderate, severe, and profound. So now it comes to occipital lobe, now which controls our eyes. Now, your eyes can pick image, your retina, send it to the occipital lobe. But can this occipital lobe interpret this image as a water? That's the challenge, therefore, kids with autism, because it is a neurodevelopmental disorder. So many of them can see water, even at age 10, 15, 20, they may not know that this is actually water. So now, coming back to the frontal lobe controls our cognitive reasonings, attention, emotions. You will see a child with autism might be behaving like someone can be 10, but behave like someone who is actually 2 or 3, and all that. Now, we have parental blues for sensory information, language, and all that. So in a nutshell here is that it affects different parts of the brain, and the self-development in this part of the brain are delayed. It may not be damaged, but delayed. So now, we have what we call regressive autism. There are some kids, based on your question now, there are some individuals who have gained words. They have gained, some basic communication skills. But later age in life, from 3 upward, now they can regress, they can lose those skills they have gotten, and they can be diagnosed of autism. So it's called regressive autism.
All right. Thank you very much, Charles Ugoke, for your opening remarks. Let's quickly get to Oka, where Maria Okafor has been listening to what we've been talking about here in the studio. Maria, let's have a sense of why it became autism advocacy for you, and how important it is to have more voices speaking up for autism.
Thank you so much. I would say I noticed the gap in Nigeria, and knowing the fact that I had the opportunity to show love to a cousin who I lost to autism before moving to the US. It was important I come back home and teach my people what this spectrum means. And that was actually what drove me into advocating for this community. And then the fact that there are so many people that are still struggling, and then there are mothers that have kids, and after having this child, you don't go back to the hospital to assess this child for the 3rd month, 6 months, and a year. Like the other advocate said, 1 year and 8 months is like the right time for you to take your child back to the hospital for an assessment. And this is something I think I noticed that keeps happening in Nigeria and needed to be spoken about and needed to be talked about. And that's what drove me into starting my initiative. Keeps happening in Nigeria.
All right, Maria, I want to stay with you. Could you share with us in your journey, advocating and speaking about autism, what are the common misconceptions in Nigeria about autism?
I think the most funny one is associating it with mental illness. My team had visited Ado Ekiti last year for one of our events, and one of the family they visited happened to chain their daughter legs and hands and, just dumped her into a room. And I remember them telling me, when we came, they were like, don't approach her, she can hit you and all of that. So I think one of the toughest misconceptions that needs to be clarified is that these kids are not mentally deranged, or they are not, possessed, like most of us still believe. That misconception needs to be clarified. These kids are special, with a special condition that needs to be taken care of. And like I always preach, if they're being taken care of and then early intervention, I still have friends that are still very much living in denial. The fear of stigmatization, so they don't even want to talk about it. So this is something we are preaching, like advocacies are talking about. You need to diagnose these kids, you need to assess them, and early intervention is key. So one of the myths, like you said, is, like still associating them with mental illness, still calling them names. However, these are kids that needs to be, like given special treatment so they can thrive. So illness, still calling them.
Now, let's get to Dotun, who joins us via Zoom from the US. Could you speak to us about some of the effective strategies for helping individuals with autism, develop social skills and, of course, live a normal life?
Okay, thank you very much. We understand the importance of early intervention in our children with autism. And the earlier we start to support them in their area of need, the better they turn out. We all know that whatever disorder or condition you find yourself, the earlier you start, the more successful you are likely to become. So like Maria said, it's important that we try as much as possible to introduce these children to the community early. We are blessed in Nigeria for that same reason, because we don't, in the recent past, we didn't used to keep our children in the home. We would take them out. We will introduce them to our family members. We'll go for parties. We'll go to social gatherings. And some of these strategies have helped, to support these children to gain some form of social independence. And the beauty of autism is that the more you introduce this child to strategies, so for instance, the child is on a playground, probably has some sensory dysfunction, maybe oversensitivity to sound, oversensitivity to too many people talking at the same time. His hearing does not shut down, so he keeps hearing everything. So in that regard, he decides to remove himself from that situation and isolates himself. So slowly you introduce him into the social gathering slowly. And by the time the system starts to tolerate some of these interactions, he begins to learn how to interact with other children in his own way. Same thing with speech and communication. You can teach it. You can help that child get to a stage where he begins to communicate. Like Mr. Charles said earlier, that we have regressive autism. We notice that when you start introduce the words to them, sometimes they need a little bit of one-on-one for you to take them out of certain group learning situations where you tackle their challenges one-on-one. They learn better in the one-on-one settings, and then you slowly introduce them back into the group where they will understand and generalize whatever you have taught in that regard. So it's important that we recognize what the challenge of that child is. We recognize the learning style of that child. Very, very vital, very important. We must know how he learns. We must not use the general way of teaching the child to bring that to the table for every child with autism. Remember, autism is a heterogeneous condition, meaning that the minute you have recognize one person with autism, your intervention must be tailored to that one person. You cannot generalize intervention when it comes to children with autism. So we need to know what the diagnosis is. We need to know what the learning style is. We need to know the environment also matters a lot. Where is this child learning? The people teach around that child. Do they understand the needs of that child? And how are they able to tailor the needs of that child into supporting that child? It's a very complex step, but it's not an impossible step.
Dr. And that's why I like to ask Mr. Rugbere here, how you navigate the balance. You strike that, you walk that thin line between advocating your child's needs and respecting the autonomy and independence that they deserve.
So I think you can't speak about one without talking about the other. So in as much as you want your child to be independent, you still need to ensure that you're available for him to educate other people, especially if you want him to, interact socially, educate other people, so I ensure that my family members, my friends, people in school understand what it is, so it's not stigmatized.
And do you find particular strategies helpful and successful in your journey of looking after your child?
Yes, absolutely. So routines. So what I noticed that it's, as I said, he has triggers. So if you have a very stern routine that will follow, that's what we do at home. We have routines that he's used to. He knows it's time for this, it's time for this,
and he's comfortable with them.
And he's comfortable with that. Yeah. So it helps. Routines help him a lot actually. And I would advise parents to pick up routines as well for their kids.
All right, Happy, thank you so much. Charles, from all that we've been hearing from our guest, it looks like handling this has to do with understanding your child, dealing, with your child in terms of relations and, how they handle tasks and all of that. But are there technologies? Are there medicines? Are there, if you like, other ways to assist these children? Is there surgery? Is there anything, to correct this brain development issue?
Okay. Basically and medically, there is no surgery, there is no medications to correct this brain disorder. The only way out is for therapy, the speech therapy, behavioral therapy, occupational therapy, and other forms of therapeutic intervention. For example, there are so many children with autism who has problem behaviors, and that is where the ABA comes in. ABA means applied behavior analysis. So it's psychological principles being developed to manage children with autism and even other children with special needs. There are children with autism who do develop tantrums and meltdown. And meltdown is different from tantrum. Meltdown, a child is not aware of danger at that point. But for tantrums, these kids are aware of danger. So now, there are some kids that when you meet them first, the first thing you need to do is to work on the behavior, manage the behavior, all right? And number two here is for coming from the angle of a speech pathologist. This is what we do. Once we meet a child, we need to check the speech milestone development of that child. There are some kids that will meet one size. They are 7, but they are at level of 3. That level 3 where a child can only repeat what they hear and label what they see with one word. So what we do is start working on that child. The more you work on the child, the more the brain self-develop, the more they pick up more speech and more cognitive reasoning. So basically there's no drug to correct the brain disorder. There's no surgery to correct brain disorder.
So from what you're saying, it's a lifelong disorder?
It's a lifelong disorder.
And how long?
Now, based on what we do from the angle of a speech pathologist, so there is no time frame for treatment. However, there are some kids who are on level 1, like I mentioned earlier, with proper early intervention, which start from 18 months to 2 months, so 18 months to 2 years rather, you'll be able to get a faster early intervention. And there are some kids that, after some years of intervention, they can live an independent life. But some, those on level 3 might need support all through their life, all right?
All right, thank you very much. Let's quickly get back to Kanu, where Dr. Halima is. Dr. Halima, all right, please tell us what's the place, the role of cultural factors in autism has been and in treating autism. Have there been influences, on the side of culture and other practices in treating and caring for autistic persons?
Yes, before there is a low awareness of this disorder. Generally, children with brain disorder, there is some form of misconception as to what causes it. Some beliefs is devil associated, spirit associated, non-medical in quote, non-medical associated conditions. However, recently there has been, with this awareness, there's an improvement. The schools have been helpful. Some of the schools here do send children from time to time if they observe 1 or 2 features, if they are suspecting if that child has autism. So we've been seeing like a kind of a surge of referrals or suspected cases as to whether this child has autism or not. So overall, there is increased awareness, and then even though we need to do more, we need to do much more than where we are. But there's improvement actually. So people begin to now understand and realize that this disorder actually exists, and then it needs some intervention. However, like one of the speakers says, the stigma is there, the denial is there. Some parents, some families don't want to disclose because they don't believe that the child has those features until maybe with interventions, then they come back to reality and then accept. So there are still those cases where denials are there, and so on. And then another thing is the places where they can go and get care. That's another challenging part. Even in the medical profession, we need to have more of the specialists where they can, these children can be taken care of. For instance, in Kano here, I don't think we have more than 2 speech therapists. And then, like for me now, I'm a practicing pediatric neurologist. So ideally, in an ideal place, you need someone called a developmental pediatrician, a neurodevelopmentalist who is specially trained to take care of developmental disorders. But you see, we see all this together in our clinic, so we need more and more specialization. We need research. We need support from the family, the society, and the system should be able to accommodate and find a place for these children where they can fit into. Because like one of the speakers also said, some of them are amazingly intelligent. This disorder has nothing to do with the intelligence, although some of them could have an intellectual disability, but for some that have a normal to even higher average intelligence, they can actually be supported, they can be trained to fit into an amazing skills and acquisition, and then they can do well and for a life. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Dr. Halima, let's quickly go to Maria now in Oka. You were talking a lot about a relative who eventually passed on who had autism. I want you to speak to us about that experience. And then since you run a foundation that, looks specifically at people with autism, tell us, how expensive is care, if you like, support for, someone with autism?
That experience I would start with is something I really do not want to even talk about, because it felt like God gave you an opportunity to do something and that wasn't done. I think that was about, I'm not quite sure with the year, but maybe 2013. I had lost my grandma, and my cousin happened to be staying with my grandma all through. She never even stayed with the mom. And fast forward, shortly after my grandma passed, I had moved to the US 2015, and I heard she passed as well. So I think it has to do with the fact that nobody from my family understood, the spectrum at that time, and showed the level of care that she got from my grandmother, and negligence, I would say. So moving to the States and having to work with Yvonne Laughlin, who happened to be one of the speakers during my event in Abuja, I met the son, Ryan. I had taken classes as a social worker as well, and I started working with them. The first thing I noticed my first day with them was the fact that everything he was doing had to do with what my cousin possessed. Like the repetition of words, not looking directly into my eyes, flabbing, and all of those signs. And obviously I kept reading more about autism, and I understood that this was exactly what my cousin was going through. Unfortunately, I can't go back to, bring her back to, like really show her the care and love she deserved. Running the foundation, this is my 3rd year. We kicked off our inaugural event in where I'm from, which happens to be where my cousin was living with my grandma, Anambra State, Opo. And it was a beautiful event. We told the students about the spectrum, which I feel like we left there having them understood that something like this truly existed. Now, when it comes to costs, running a foundation and especially having to like cater for people like this on assessment, I want to believe that one of the reasons why a lot of mothers have their kids and don't bother going back to the hospital to get these kids assessed, like monthly interval, is because of the cost. And my initiative is looking to see if we can get, like something signed. If I'm your doctor and I help you through delivery, you should be able to have at least 3 to 4 free assessments until that child clocks 18 months. It's something that we're pushing, and I'm hoping that is being, like looked into, because I can't have a child and then just run with it. And 2 years after having that baby, and the baby is non-verbal, I don't even want to understand what is wrong with this child. I'm not taking this child to go, like seek help. I just, like run with whatever name that comes through my head. That's one of the challenges we're facing in Nigeria. And I'm hoping that the government come through and, like sign most of these bills that can help, not just getting the right statistics for autistic kids in Nigeria, but also help mothers understand what is wrong with their kids after childbirth.
Thank you very much for your input there. Let's quickly get back to Dotun, who has joined us via Zoom from the US. Dotun, I often hear people talk about autistic children, and I wonder, are there no autistic adults, grown men and grown women who are autistic?
Of course, autism starts from childhood. You start when you realize that something is not quite right, between the ages of 12 and 18 months. And when you start with that journey, it's not a journey that ends after a couple of years. It's not something that you can speak to say, oh, after 4 years, this child will be fine. So it's the children that grow up to be adults with autism. Coincidentally, I'm also a mother of a young man living with autism, and he's doing very well in his field. He started quite early. I started when he was 2.5 to seek intervention. And like Dr. Alima said, some of them have very good cognitive skills. He has very strong mathematical and pattern skills, which threw him into the world of mathematics. So everything he did when he was young was towards mathematics. When he finally graduated, he graduated with a first class in mathematics. When we are almost done now with PhD in mathematics. So you see the pattern in which every child takes is different. So they are adults. My son is an adult. He's over 20 and he's doing very well in his area of need. Does that mean that the autism spectrum has completely left his system? He still has his nuances. He still has his patterns. He still has the ways in which he does things, which is peculiar to him, which makes him a human being. So we have adults with autism doing very well. We also have young children with autism that have challenges maybe with communication skills or using behavior as a means of communication. And they are very brilliant artists. I mean, when they put the brush and the color into paper, you find out how brilliantly, the painting comes out for those children. You have some of them that are very good with music. You put the piano right before them, and they don't even need to be able to read the music. Once they hear it, they can play it seamlessly. So there are splinter skills that these children possess that we must not miss. Many times we are concentrated on their challenges. We do not really put our finger on the strength that they carry. We should not let those challenges, those behavioral, I must say, behavioral patterns are sometimes a means of communication. They are telling you something. So in that behavior, you must know what happened, what caused this child to behave in this manner before you start to change the behavior. So that's pattern will tell you that this is the trigger. This is what I must either remove or add to support this child to get to this level. And the minute you begin to understand their pattern, their routines, and you put structure in place, they work brilliantly with structure. So they need to know what is happening now. They need to know what is coming next. They need to know the end result of whatever you are trying to teach. Those are important skills for their brain to be able to process intellectually and independently for them to achieve some of the outcomes that we are looking for them to achieve. Many times in the Nigeria that we are, you know that we are very spiritual. I reject it in Jesus' name, comes a very long, comes into the lips of the parents the minute they find out, the minute you even mention the word autism. So you have to encourage the parents to get over that and move towards supporting this individual. Maria mentioned that her cousin grew up with the grandmother. It's a pattern that we see regularly. Parents take the children, or even the grandparents will say, bring this child to me. Let me take care of the child. While you go on and do your own things, at least I'm old. I understand how to manage these children. When we go into the community to do community awareness, we find that there are a lot of grandparents that are supporting these children without even knowing what to do. So that is why we go into the community, into the social rural community, and teach them the skills that which they can use to support the children in their home environment. So there are many adults. We have adults at Patrick's that work with us, and they have autism, and they are thriving in their own way. They have their challenges some of the time, but once you are able to give them the right support, once you're able to give them the right accommodation in the workplace, they really, really thrive and they do well. And some of them that don't even have speech and are using behavior as a means of communication, we support them. We allow them to thrive in their places of interest. Very vital. We must know where their interest is. We must know what they love and enjoy, and then give them the right support.
To stay with you, you have mentioned support countless times in your response to questions so far. Since you are a parent with an autistic child, or if you like adult now, could you share with us, specifically the support systems and resources that helped you in nurturing your child to this level? And then I would just like you to also share with us, moments of joy or progress, that you experienced in the course of raising your child. Because, when you talk about showing support to an autistic child, we know that even for parents who have children without autism, it's really challenging having to raise children. So be specific now with the support you're talking about, just so that parents who are in these shoes can pick up the right steps.
Okay, so when we came in the year 2000, I came in at a time when autism, the stigma associated with autism was very, very high. Many people were not talking about their experiences with their children. A lot of people were hiding and doing therapy in their homes and not bringing the child out into the community. A lot of people were hiding in schools, and schools took advantage of that and kept the children in a particular setting without the right resources. So what happened during my own time was that when we found out that my son had autism, he actually had regressive autism. He had speech at 12. At 18 months, he began to lose those communication skills. He stopped talking completely. And when I got the diagnosis, I was blessed to have a pediatrician at that time who after countless visits to the hospitals and people saying, oh, don't worry, there's nothing wrong with your son. He's a boy, he talks late. And when I found Dr. Biodun Aluko, she told me that, Dr. your son has autism, but there's something you must know. There's nothing available in Nigeria. You must take your child out of this country. And I said, I don't have the means, I don't have the resources to take this boy out of the country. And moreover, he's not my first child. I have a daughter, who also has her life. So how do I just whisk the entire family out of the country? So she said to me, go get a speech and language therapist. So we got a speech and language therapist. The speech and language therapist worked with my son for 5 years before he eventually gained speech. And we went to the school. We were taking him out for one-on-one session in that school, which helped in the sense that everything that was taught during the day, we would take him out for 1 hour. I went to the school. I told them that they should please help me. This boy is not speaking. This is what I'm going through. They said, oh, don't worry, Mrs. Akonde, we will support you. So the support came from the doctor. The support came from the school. The school gave me 1 hour after school to support this young man. And by the time he got to the age of 5, and the school had something very interesting. They were very big in music and concerts. And when we got to the age of 5, he started to pick up the words back: water, take, give, In the midst of this child not being able to speak, we realized that he was learning. That was my first anchor that I held on to. And I began to teach him the skills. My husband and I will teach him how to brush his teeth, brush his hair, wear his trousers, something that other children will pick up easily. We taught him every single thing, taking that into consideration. That is another parental support that is needed. Then we now moved into I actually thought he would never be able to go to school. So I got him a music teacher to say, okay, there's nothing wrong with you because autism has no physical features. You cannot tell from looking at the child that something is wrong. It's an invisible disorder, as we call it. So we got him the piano teacher to teach him how to play music. And with that, he started to play the piano. He started to read music. So this child that wasn't speaking, that was struggling with certain challenges to loud noise, he was doing all these amazing things. So when I found out there was nothing on ground, that was what gingered me to set up Patrick Speech and Languages Center. So I said, I cannot be the only woman in the whole of Nigeria that has a child like this. So I began to speak about it. So that was how we started Patrick Speech and Language Center 19 years ago. So moving forward, he struggled through primary school, struggled through secondary school. But when he had the opportunity to pick his subjects, maths, add maths, ICT, physics, chemistry, things that don't change, things that had patterns, he excelled tremendously. And then when he finished, he came out with A's. The only way he struggled is with English. And because English is so complex, you need to understand it, you need to summarize it, you need to comprehend it. These are things that are difficult for individuals with autism because it has no pattern. You have to think it through. So those are challenges that they face. But can they be supported in their area of interest and strength? Yes. It is not a walk in the park. It is a marathon. You must stay with it. The parents must first accept. The environment must be loving and teachable. Find every teaching moment in his daily activities. That way, that child would be able to understand it. It is rough. It is tough. There were trying times. There were times where we were despondent, that we just thought that the world, the entire world was against us. But growing up and with that persistence and that love and that belief that this child would do well, he has gotten to a stage now where he's doing his PhD in mathematics. And it's not the only one. And then we must always not look at those that are academically inclined. We have a young girl at Patrick's who struggles with communication, but you give her a dress, she can sew a dress a day. So these are things that we must take into consideration. Find what that individual loves, enjoys, and can do independently. We must sharpen it. There is no child that's or no that cannot get. All he does is work with the nannies, work with the janitors. He takes out the bin every day. So we must not allow this to overwhelm us, even though I know it sometimes seems like a hopeless journey. We must hold on to the anchor of hope for this our children to be able to be successful in whatever area we find that we can support them. The government too needs to come in. It's a financially draining condition. We spend a lot of money on therapy, not knowing when it will end. We need the support for these families. We need the mental health training for the parents to give them some form of respite in their way, in their journey towards helping these children get to a place of independence. So that's where the support, the community too needs to come into support. The religious houses need to come into support. If these families get all this support that is needed, corroborate this story that with the support they get from the US, it is just out of this world. Not to talk of what financial help that they get, and we get none. We, the parents, take this on foolhardy and with all our shoulders in place. So the support is will be very much appreciated.
Thank you very much for those remarks. Let's quickly get by in order not to lose the momentum here. And you have a much younger child, that you care for. And I'm just wondering, can you describe already any moments of joy or progress in your journey so far in looking out for your child as an autistic parent?
Yes. So to answer it simply, after we started the therapy, so I have a therapist that come in, and I have a therapist that lives in as well. So it's quite a lot. But what we've noticed is the therapy helped him to gain speech. So now he can respond, he can ask for things that he wants, he can actually take care of himself compared to when we first started. And what me and my wife do now is, whenever we're having little wins, we celebrate it. He's saying, I want water, we're jumping up, we're making him feel encouraged, so we celebrate the little wins, and we ensure that and we always encourage him to do more in areas that is
do you take your child out? Are you
Yes.
speaking? Are you comfortable speaking about the fact that your child is autistic? When other parents, because this issue of parents. Oh, how old is your child? Oh, he's 4. You mean he cannot say water? Now, how do you feel handling such, with your child, especially when you have to go out with him?
So initially it was difficult, especially for my wife. She didn't like talking about it. To something of the stigma was we even had schools that had to call us to withdraw him. But right now I'm more comfortable talking about it. That's why I'm here. I'm comfortable talking about it because I know that it's not a death sentence. So they can get better. I've read about a lot of entrepreneurs that are doing very well as autistic people.
Persons,
so I feel that so I'm comfortable talking about it.
Is your child in a special school or in a normal school with every other kid?
So I have to pay like extra classes for him in the school.
To get extra attention.
To get extra attention, yeah, and that's helpful as well.
But can you put it in terms of Naira and Kobo? You say he's how old now?
4.
4. Can you quantify how much you've spent already in 4 years to give us a sense of the cost implication?
So I'm not keeping track, but therapy is not cheap. I like what Dr. Dotun was saying about how help will be needed, but it's going to a couple of millions now.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
and not everybody can afford
exactly.
that.
And I want to find out, Charles, why are therapists charging so much? Now, this is a condition that, it just falls on you. And therapists are charging so much, parents are not able to cope. You heard Dotun complain about it, the cost and all. That's on one part. Talk about that. Then also, we're talking about autistic children. What about autistic adults who are in the workplace? I'm just thinking that could be the reason why, some employees may not be able to do certain tasks in their workplaces. But employers don't even pay attention, to the fact that, this may be an autistic employee and then having to deal with the person differently and, manage, or if you like, support the individual. How can we get better in that regard?
I am somewhat interested in the two questions, but let me start with adult. The problem we have here is the advocacy. Many people are now in a working environment that there are some conditions that may make one not to behave in a certain pattern, right, like every other person. But and it's really a big challenging situation for we that advocate for individuals with autism, because I have seen a workplace where a particular staff is being stigmatized. Everybody was angry. Why is she this way? Why is she this way? I met the employer. I said, please, can I discuss with you? There are these conditions that this person is passing through. I have not assessed this person, but based on the behavioral patterns and observations, this person might have some form of autism while growing up. Now, can you just sit down. Can we assess this person together? Let us know her strengths and weaknesses. And it took him time to actually accept the fact that something could be wrong, but this person can do a lot. So by the time we sat down and discussed, and we invited her, we asked her some, because she has level 1 autism, so high functioning, they can do a whole lot of things, like my previous colleagues have said already. So when we assessed her, we realized that she knows her patterns. She has her routines. Now, this is how she works. If you give her tasks, all right, just give her time, the deadlines, she'll be able to do that. Anything about computer, about computer paperwork, she's extremely good. I have never seen someone who was this good in terms of paperwork. So I asked her, please remove her from this department, take her to admin team, give her this task, or maybe secretary. Trust me, she will deliver. And she did that. Trust me, this girl became the best staff ever. She even won the Staff of the Year award because she was good with paperwork. All right, but we have to also call the staff meeting, educate them now to know that this person is not stubborn. This is the reason why it's like this. Kindly accept this person with her condition and cooperate with her. This is what you can do. This is what you shouldn't do. Sometimes she'll come to the office, she won't greet anybody. Of course. Now, we know they have issue with the social interactions. They will greet her, she'll not even answer you. They have what we call selective mutism. It's an anxiety disorder or speech where the individual chooses when to answer you, when to talk, when to whom to talk to, and where to talk. They might choose that is Mr. A I'll talk to today. Mr. B, no way. And that means that you have to bond with them. You have to come close to them. They have to trust you. So sometimes they'll greet her, hello, good morning, good morning. She will never answer you. They'll be angry. She's so proud. She's very stubborn. I said, please, she's not stubborn. It is called selective mutism. They choose when to talk.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
He's about to answer the part of course.
Yeah, so,
okay,
yeah.
okay.
Now,
quickly, please.
In a summary, we need more advocacy in a working environment for accommodation and modification. So it's very important. So number 2 for the cost. The resources being used for this intervention is really high. And sometimes we buy most of them in abroad. So it's really very high. And also...
Like what and what now?
Okay, we use some devices that aid speech and other skills. We get toys, we get flashcards, we get a whole lot of things. And these items are really cost effective.
An office apartment, office complex or something?
Yeah. Office complex.
Or because speech therapists are few.
No. It's not because we are few. It's just because it is really cost effective to get out. And number 2 here is that it's not only the speech therapist, right? You will see a child with autism who might need occupational therapist, behavioral therapist, special educator, and speech therapist. You see the parents paying a lot, employing 2 to 3 to 4 therapists just for one child. You will see that and once again is that most therapists go out to houses and schools for interventions because most parents are busy, they may not be able to come to your office for
therapy. So you're
calculating
the price of your...
Charles,
yeah, of course.
No
yeah.
problem.
That will be the challenge. That will be the challenge that we have.
we have to pay some bills.
We'll take a break now.
Okay, thank you.
The conversation continues. Stay locked.
Thank you.
All right, nice to know you're still there on Good Morning Nigeria, where we are discussing autism. I'd like to quickly get back to Oka to engage Maria. Maria, are there ways that employers, can create more inclusive environment for autistic persons in their midst? And then society, how can society become more accommodating? Is there a role for government in all of this?
Absolutely. I would say yes. Like one of the speaker was talking about jobs creation, like what an employer working in a certain area. I think half of the challenges, or one of the reasons why the colleagues were not able to identify the colleague was autistic is because obviously a lot of paperwork was not being done. In the US, for an autistic person to be employed, there are paperwork. You need to sign if you have any disability, and click which of the disability that is applicable to you. I don't think we have that here. I don't know how employment here works. I mean, it's been a minute. I worked in Nigeria, and like you said, and then there are other organizations and like stores that have designated time for families with autistic kids and even autistic adults to come shop, i.e. IKEA in the US. IKEA has a time where autistic patients or, autistic families that want to bring their kids to shop in IKEA come, where they're like, it's more sensory friendly. There are no loud music. You can bring your kids and, do your shoppings without having to go through all of the wombling and, rubbling of people in the same store at that time. So I'm guessing in Nigeria, the government should be able to implement things that can help include this community better. There should be, before you hire someone, there should be a form that should state your disability, whatever that is applicable to you. And if I hire you to work for my organization, there should be a training time for the rest of the colleagues to understand that this particular colleague has this or that, so should be treated so way. If something like this happened, this is the reason. I think that's what my initiative is advocating for: understanding, acceptance, and inclusion. If we don't understand, we cannot accept. So I don't know, I think it's best to have the government come in, involve yourself fully, put in a law that can help both the employees employ those people, and when an employee employs these people, they should be able to have like a training time frame that would help those people. And
That's a statement, if we do not understand, we cannot accept.
Yeah.
Very, apt. And of course, we need to understand autism and what it brings on the table. Let's get to Dr. Halima now. Because you are a pediatrician, also dealing with neurology and all of that, I want you to speak to us about areas you think that we could, be able to assist people with autism better, since medical science seems to be not doing anything at the moment, because you say there's no cure, there are no medications, nothing. So it's just about therapy and having to deal with the individual. What can we do as a people, as Nigerians, to assist these people live a better life?
First of all, like I said, we need more awareness about this condition. So, and then acceptance. We need to get people to be aware of the condition and then accept them, and then believe that, or accept that these children need help. By picking them early, meaning that by making the diagnosis early interventions have shown a good outcome in treating these children. So bringing children for screening, maybe I would like to advocate like there is a kind of healthy child clinic where we can screen children and see. Just the way we monitor growth of a child, for instance, expecting a child to have to weigh 12 kg at 1 year, to weigh 15, 20 kg at 2 years, to be able to sit at 6 months, to be able to walk by 1 year. So I should be able to also, there should be places where they should detect that this child should communicate, should begin to communicate at this age. This child should begin to socialize. So screening them and picking them early with the institution of early intervention measures helps a lot. So parents, community, society should bring their children for screening. Yeah, I think that would help. And then, as one of us said, the government need to come in, because this structure, the places where we need to take these children for screening, they have to be there. We need to have them in place. And then if we pick them, where do we send them to? We need all this type of, we need the specialists, we need this therapists. You see, like one of the colleagues is saying, the speech therapist is saying, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of resources to develop or to train a speech therapist, to train a behavioral therapist. It is tasking to train a special educationist, to train a behavioral therapist. it takes a lot of resources. So, and all those tools they use, all those things they use in screening and then giving them therapies, they are not just like an ordinary tools. They are so complex. A lot of thoughts and efforts have been put together to come up with those things to be able to help them. So it's really tasking managing them. It is quite resource consuming. So we need more specialists, we need more therapists, we need more centers, we need the community to give support towards achieving this goal. We need everyone to come together, the philanthropists, everyone come together so that we can help these children and then make them have a better life and a better future, so that we ease this burden on them, on the parents, on the community, and then the better for all.
Lima, thank you very much. Let me quickly take a moment to get back to Dr. in US. Doctor, I just want to find out what advice you may have, given your experience, for individuals with autism who are transitioning to adulthood and independence.
My advice would be that they should not be afraid, because we were talking earlier about how they need to disclose to their employers that they're on the spectrum. Many of them would not disclose, because the minute the employer hears autism, the likelihood that he or she will not get that job is very high. So they sneak into the work environment. And by the way, some of them have not even ever heard that they were on the spectrum. Their parents kept them in the dark of some of the things that they were exhibiting when they were a child. Because the autism around them was so mild at that point. The parents did not want them to be stigmatized against. So they never even told them that you spoke late or this happened during your childhood. They just allowed them to grow in that environment, in that community. And many of them are afraid. They are worried. They know within themselves that they are different. But sometimes they are even afraid to voice it out, to say, oh, it looks like I'm on the spectrum. Now that everybody is beginning to talk about autism, we are hearing more of it. More adults are emboldened to come out now to say, oh, I think I'm on the spectrum. Mrs. Akonde, please, can you help me find somebody that can diagnose me, that can help me with diagnosis? So in the adults, they must be emboldened, in their quest to get the community or the environment to understand their challenges. Many of them are coming out now, and many of them are beginning to want to get the help that is needed. Because what happens typically when they get to adulthood and all these things that they are feeling in their body is telling them that I'm not quite right. I don't fit into friendships. I cannot make friends. People don't understand me. And then this now falls into depression, anxiety, and then we start looking at how we can medicate them, how we can get them into the psychiatrist to give them some form of therapy, psychotherapy or something to support them in their adult life. So these adults need our support. They need our understanding. We just rose from a conference in April being Autism Awareness Month, and a young lady came to describe exactly how she feels the workplace should embrace people that are different. She said something very pertinent. She said, find a friend in your superior. Find somebody that you can understand and disclose to that person so that that person can give you the right support that is needed. So we need to encourage the organizations to please find ways in which we can find these people that are different. I mean, the speech therapist talked about how one of them is into paperwork. My secretary is on the spectrum at the center, and he does so well with telling me that, oh, madam, I'm sorry, I am beginning to get to a stage of burnout. I cannot come in today. Can I work from home? Certainly. You give him an assignment, he does it perfectly. We are intentional about supporting these individuals and not leaving them to the community that don't understand them. So the work environment need to train their staff. They need to give these people the right support that is needed. And they are increasing. The numbers are rising. I mean, at the beginning, I had 1 in 100. Today, it's 1 in 36. It's a huge number, and it's becoming an epidemic. If we don't nip it in the bud, because the cause, we are still out, the jury is still out there. If we don't start to gather data in Nigeria to aid our ability to know these people, give them the right support, help them get to their place. Look, if we give them the tools that is needed, they excel to a place that you can't even imagine. Their intellectual ability, just like Dr. Alima said, is out of this world. Some of them are so gifted in their place of strength that they can match anybody in any category and their peers at any level. That is the gifting of individuals with autism. And we must not let that gifting be drowned by anxiety and depression. We must encourage our community and continue to speak about it, continue to talk about this thing, continue to introduce them to the world, continue to introduce them to the community, and the government, they need to come in to give us the strength, the wings. We are talking about how expensive it is. Yes, you have to go for training every year. If you don't go for training, you can't know what is happening in the outside world, in the trend. That is why it is expensive. That's why therapy is expensive. You cannot just say, oh, I'm a doctor, I just sit down on it. You have to continue to support yourselves in terms of continuous professional development. Without that, you can't know what, you cannot operate in this field, because every day the things are changing. Many more things are coming into it. Research is ongoing. We still don't know a lot of things. It is the children that teach us the path and the manner in which we are going to work with them, in which we are going to give them the right support. Without these children, without us knowing where their strength lies, we cannot reach them. So it is very, very, very important. Like I always like to stress, the support that they need is much more than any human being can ever think of. Thank you.
Doctor, so much has been said. We do appreciate you. Of course, in Nigeria, the challenge will be awareness, and some people having it and not even being aware. And in a country where there's communities that do not have functional primary health care centers to deal with cases like malaria, how can we not be talking about speech therapy? Anyways, let's move away from that. Dotun gave the numbers. I also read about that. We used to have 1 in 100. Now they say 1 in 36. Is it that there's an increase in people who are born with this case? Could it be life patterns? Anything that is triggering the increase in number?
Based on research, we are yet to know the exact cause of this, but obviously there are high increase of individuals with autism, and one of it could also be the level of awareness at the same time, because before now only few knows about autism, but the advocacy is increasing, awareness is increasing more and more parents are coming out, and more individuals are, I think my child, can you? I have seen several parents that just came, I just want an assessment, I want to know about my child. They don't want therapy yet, just want to be assessed, they want to be identified, they want to know what is really wrong. However, there are a lot of things that we don't know yet, that research is still ongoing, trying to know what is really the cause of autism, or what is really increasing the number of individuals with autism. So there's nothing we can hold on for now.
All right, thank you very much. So as we wrap up the conversation, Happy, what will be your words to parents dealing with children with autism?
So what I would also advise parents is to be open. Yeah. So what a lot of people like to hide their kids. They don't want other parents to laugh at them. They don't want to be stigmatized. And I feel that the earlier you come out, the earlier you try to get help for the child. I said, me and my wife said as me and my wife agreed on, whatever it takes, we're going to do to help the child, since he can't help himself now.
All right. Happy, thank you very much. I don't know if we have a moment to quickly get to Oka just before we go. Maria, if you can hear me, advocacy for you, well, circumstance pushed you into advocacy. And so what would you want the society to do better as, we round off this program? What would you want them to do better towards us?
Like I always preach, understanding, acceptance, and then inclusion in any area, any field you find yourself. But I think the top of my list is the government. Like Mrs. Akande was saying, like the level of support this community needs is very huge. It is very difficult taking care of a child. Now let's talk of a child with, disabilities, autism, and all of that. So I feel like it is high time. I was very excited the 2nd of April hearing the First Lady talk about celebrating them and talking about early diagnosis and intervention is key. And that means she now understands this community truly is in our society. And I would really urge the government to, step in, start up a project, create free assessment center, like put in laws, not just putting in the law, but set up a board that would, follow this up. And aside the government as well, we as individuals need to start advocating for this community. They are here, in any area, in any place of field you are in. It's our responsibility to, stand in for them. So in a nutshell, I would really want every person, there are forums and organizations and certifications as well online for parents with these kids. Try to understand, when you see a pattern, go for the assessment, try to really understand what your child is going through. Being living in denial and just trying to, and keep praying is not the key. So my last word is please, when you notice anything after a year, take your child back to the hospital, try to get assessments, and if they are being assessed and stamped autism, go ahead start early. Mr. Kande just told us a story about the son, doing really great in his field. And I think I'm going to upload that and associate that with early intervention. So there's no need of trying to, praying and saying, God forbid, and things like this are not for me. It is already there. It's a condition and not a disease. So I urge everybody, the society, the people at large to start early.
That's a fine place to leave the conversation. Start early and not just rely only on prayers. Many thanks, Maria Okafor, founder RIA by Maria RBM Autism Foundation. We do appreciate you for being our guest on the show today. Of course, we also appreciate Happy Rugberry, a business development and marketing specialist who is also an autistic parent. We wish you all the best, and of course looking forward to hearing the success story of your child very soon. Of course, Charles Ugoke, a speech language pathologist and CEO, Sunset Speech and Language Resource Center. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Also, Dr. Halima Adamu Dao, a pediatrician, neurology unit, Department of Pediatrics, Aminu Kano Teaching Hospital, and State President, Medical Women Association of Nigeria. We appreciate you for your time. Thank you so much, and looking forward to having you some other time. All right, finally, Dotun Akonde, founder and director, Patrick Speech and Languages Center. Thank you so much for being our guest. Of course, looking forward to hearing more stories, not just from your child or the children that you're working with. So that's the conversation this morning. So much has been said. I'm Henry John. Enjoy your weekend.
Right, and I'm Victor Azo. We thank you for staying with us, and do enjoy the rest of your day.